Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the organizers of this event. It's a very impressive and useful event, and I congratulate you for you organizing it and managing to put together such an interesting program. So my name is Kimmo Rossi. I work at the European Commission, and our job is to run funding programs, technology and innovation programs for various key technologies. And one of these such key technologies that I'm going to talk about today is language technology. So the rationale and the justification for language technologies has already come up several times, but I just wrap it up by saying that one good way out of the economic crisis is to complete the single European market. It's almost done already, so it's almost there. There are just a few barriers left, and the language barrier is one of the most difficult ones and one of the most prominent ones. Because many services, information, knowledge, and interaction moves freely on the internet, but it's in different languages, and what if you don't understand what's on your screen, then that's the end of the free movement of information and services. So that's the issue that we try to tackle with our funding programs. We've been supporting language technology for a long time. It has a long history. The most recent wave of support started some 5 years ago, and it was triggered by the explosion of online content in many languages. And there were also some promising technical advances in machine translation that made this field popular again. There's been ups and downs of popularity and unpopularity, and the past 5 years there has been a lot of action. We now have about a portfolio of about 60 technology projects that enjoy a total of 150 million euro funding. And if you convert to that to how many people are working in this project, it's about 700-800 full-time equivalents. So it is a sizable community. And now to the areas that we have been supporting. So quoting Hans or his dentist, that these are the teeth that we have been flossing with our funding program because we cannot afford to floss them all. Speech recognition, dialogue systems, machine translation, analytics and semantic technologies, information extraction, information retrieval, and then language resources. So I take them one by one. What is the situation in each of these fields? The situation in automatic speech recognition is very difficult in Europe. We have a very strong research base in Europe, the best researchers in speech recognition, but Europe has lost practically all industry in this field. The big European companies that used to have speech technology research and development, they have discontinued that, and most of the smaller and medium-sized companies in this area, they have been acquired by American multinational companies. So there's practically no industry in Europe in the speech recognition field anymore. But we have such a strong research base that we should not throw it away. And on the other hand, the large US companies may not actually feel obliged to serve all the European languages, so we will have a lot of gaps in their systems. Apple may not come with a Latvian version of the Siri anytime soon, so somebody else may have to develop it for them if it becomes really a mainstream functionality. And there are many opportunities for European research and technology and industry. And maybe the opportunities are not in the mainstream speech recognition itself, but in special areas of conversation and dialogue technologies. All in all, this field has a very large industrial importance in mobile devices and cars, and it will increase in the future. Machine translation in Europe has much brighter situation. So it also has a very strong research basis, as Hans outlined, so that we have even borrowed some of our best researchers to the US and to the large multinationals. But we also have a strong, dynamic European industry in the machine translation. They are mostly small and medium-sized enterprises, like Tilde. We can boast many success stories in machine translation. We have developed an open source toolkit which has proved to be very powerful, not only for research purposes as it was originally intended, but it has proved to be useful also for creating the fast development of custom-built machine translation systems for commercial purposes. Technology transfer has been effective in the fields of machine translation, from research to the market. But there are many challenges. As Hans outlined, there are many languages that are missing, that are falling off the edge unless we make some efforts of bringing them to the same level as the mainstream languages. The mainstream languages are those that are well served by machine translation and other systems. So the coverage of all EU languages is something that is still not there. Automatic analysis of text is an emerging and exciting new area where you will find a lot of scientific papers and a lot of enthusiasm. And it's driven by the need of companies and also public authorities to analyze what is on the web automatically, and more what citizens, what people, what consumers write on the web about their wishes or about how they feel about a certain product. A recent trend in analytics is that it faces new challenges of covering more languages. It was traditionally built to only cover the English language and maybe some other large languages, but now the majority of web content is in languages other than English, so this approach doesn't work anymore. You miss a large part of the information on the web if you only concentrate on the big languages. And there is more and more ill-formed and noisy and buggy content that also needs to be analyzed. So, for example, the feeds coming from Twitter that are very difficult to analyze by automatized means. So we are still, in this field, very far from covering all the EU languages. And then the fourth topic, finally, to make all this work, to make analytics or machine translation or speech recognition work, you need language resources. It's the raw material for all of them. So it's the material that you use for training your systems to understand a certain language. So that's a reason why we have been supporting collection and processing of language resources, and very importantly, making them available, finding what's out there, making them available, accessible, and reusable by those who want to develop systems that are able to handle different languages. There are numerous problems with access to language resources, and they are some of them are sound very trivial and stupid. There are limitations due to copyright and licensing issues, and simply the fact that it's impossible to find language resources even if it's there. So there has been significant work in this field by the Meta Alliance and the sub-project of that MetaShare that Stelios is going to talk about in more detail. So the main funding instrument for these activities has been the 7th Framework Program. We are now at the end of the program. 2013 will be the last year of operation of the 7th Framework Program. We currently have 2 calls for proposals open in the field of language technologies, and then the 7th Framework Program is over. These calls for proposals close 15th of January 2013, and they are in these 3, basically address these 3 technology fields that I just outlined. But then there's a special call for proposals open for project proposals addressed to small and medium-sized enterprises. It's the item number 4. And it's intended to facilitate and push further the technology transfer to small companies. So enable small companies to use language technologies to bridge language barriers. So then the new programs that are currently on the drawing board. There are 2 relevant programs, 2 programs where language technologies have been proposed. Horizon 2020, which is in a way the next framework program. So in a certain way it's the framework program number 8, but it's actually much more that because it combines research and innovation, which were previously in 2 different programs. And then there's the Connecting Europe facility, which is about building infrastructures of roads and cable networks, communication networks, but also digital services networks. These 2 programs are now just legislative proposals, so they are not yet active. They have not been adopted yet. So they are being handled, examined, discussed by the lawmakers of the European Union. In other words, the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers, so the Member States and the European Parliament. Horizon 2020, so it is the research and innovation program. It has some new elements, and one new element is that it combines research and innovation. Research and taking it to the market. It's all now in the same program, which makes sense because they are very closely related tasks and challenges. Then it has the novelty of financial instruments, which basically means access to finance, access to loans, guarantees, and venture capital to European companies, because that has been a major obstacle for growth of European companies. They don't have access to finance. In the US, the situation is much better for companies. And then there is a dedicated instrument to support the growth of small and medium-sized enterprises. This happens to be a problem in Europe, that companies only grow up to a certain size and then they stay there. And this feature in the new program is trying to address that problem. This is just to show you how the theme of language or language technology appears in the current draft or the proposal of the Horizon 2020 program. So it's very general, on a very general level. There are no details about which language technologies would be supported. This will only happen later. Now at this stage of discussion about the adoption, this is the level of granularity and detail that is in the Then the other program, Connecting Europe Facility. It's the same situation. It is just a legislative proposal. It's about pan-European public interest infrastructures and very different kinds of infrastructure. So it's transport, meaning road and rail networks, ports and harbors, energy grids, and then what is closer to our business is telecommunication networks. Telecommunication network has two parts in this program: broadband, building the broadband coverage everywhere in Europe, and digital service platforms. And one of these proposed digital service platforms is multilingual access to online services. So that's the name, how it is called in this legislative proposal, multilingual access to online services. And the idea behind this is to give tools to all providers of online services and online content to have their content visible in all languages of Europe, so that every European would understand basically the information and would be able to use the online services irrespective of language barriers. So this is a very concrete program. This is not about research, and this is about actually putting the results of research in practice. So it addresses basically two different aspects: European level public services, so making them operate cross barriers and achieve at cost savings by not duplicating nationally at national level all these services, but to create gradually pan-European public services through portals that would have to support multilingual use. And then commercial services, e-commerce, to complete the digital single market. That's the other part of the task. Then just a few words of what happens next. I always feel uneasy speaking about these two programs because we drafted our proposal more than a year ago. It has been the same constant for 1 year now, and everything can change tomorrow. The member states can vote it down and kill it, or they can support it. Actually, the next few weeks are crucial because in exactly 2 months, the member states are going to meet in a summit, European summit, where they will be discussing the budget of the European Union for years 2014 to 2020. It's a package of 1 trillion euro, so 1,000 billion or 1 million euro. And many member states, especially those that are net contributors to the budget, are requiring budget cuts, going up to 100 billion, which is 10% of the whole package. So we don't know where those budget cuts will be operated and which areas of activities will be affected by those budget cuts. At the same time, however, we are hopeful that member states recognize the utility of these programs and language technology as a tool actually to create growth and jobs in Europe. So we are confident. We are continuing the discussions with stakeholders and communities like the Meta Alliance, like the group led by Hans, giving us the science fiction, the realistic science fiction that should appear in these programs in the future to make it more concrete and to draft the first work programs, while at the same time we cannot really count on these programs becoming a reality until they are adopted. So the conclusion is that there has been rather sizable support for language technologies, and Bridging language barriers in the online domain is extremely important, and it's even more important for smaller languages. There is a proposed language technology program in the two legislative proposals that I outlined, but the lawmakers will finally decide about these programs. And we need the continuing support of the EU member states for the case of multilingualism and language technologies. So, thank you very much.